Yo, yo, yo. Hey, Fancy Lou Who. Hey, Shannon. How are you, darling? Girl, this book. Oh my gosh. This book is so dark. It was some of the things my nightmares are made of. I mean, seriously. Y'all, my eyes all red. I've been outside and the pollen's horrible. Man, this book. Mm, I'd have to put it down, come back. Put it down, come back. Because, man, your head is messed up, sister. That's all I gotta say. This is some dark shit. Mm. I don't want to read anything that's dark. That's darker. I don't know that I can read anything dark. This is a Vincy, Nina, Jackie kind of book. I'm not even sure Miss Shirley likes them this dark. I just text Jackie and I said love read instead of live read. My new phone hasn't learned my words yet. Yeah, I can't do anything darker than this. This is just too much for me. But I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good book, and I left your review over on being in today. So mm, I know I got the art copy in the real book. Did you put any trigger warnings out there? Because man, this triggered all kinds of warnings, and I don't even have trigger warnings. Damn, you wrote it good though. Oh my gosh, it is very well written. Which with your stuff, I don't ever doubt it anyway. I mean, your stuff's good. And yes, you are notorious for making me cry. But yeah, this oof. Mm, I can't hardly handle dark. It should. Yeah, this is if you look at the cover, it should be warning enough, at least for people that don't like BDSM. But this is not even BDSM. This is ooh, this takes BDSM to that nightmare level. But it's good. It's good, and you'll make your made up mind though. Whew. So, how's spring doing for you? Looks like your books are pouring out like crazy. Oh yeah, you you gotta ease into. They need to start off with like Chub Rub or something for Shannon Youngblood's books. You can't go straight to Trapped. But yeah, it looks like you're doing pretty good. Um, I noticed a few new books out, didn't I? Or just not books I'd never seen before. I am doing well. I got my new phone yesterday. Vincy, look, I didn't show you that. That's my new. Don't that suit me? I was without a phone for my phone went out Sunday or Saturday before last. And I just got a new phone yesterday. Jackie's in the house. And you snuck in there between everything, Jackie. I didn't even see you, darling. Jackie's one of your big fans. I know that much. But I wasn't ready to upgrade to the 5G plan yet because it's not really in our area. And trying to get a 4G phone, new phone, is like, I ordered one phone off Amazon, which I've done that plenty of times. And it finally came in today. I had canceled it, but it was already with FedEx and it was just sitting there. It was just sitting there. The day after the company I got it from shipped it, but then FedEx had it just sitting there. And I got it today. And Monday morning I got up and I was like, just screw this. I got back on Amazon and I found one to be here by Wednesday, by today. And it came in yesterday. Ordered it Monday morning. It was here yesterday. So now I have two phones. I'm debating on whether I want to send this other one back or pay what I did for it. Probably just send it back. Neener Beaner. What you doing, sister? What's that doing? Did you have a nice walk? Me and Big Daddy were sitting back there on the back deck watching the roosters. Oh my gosh. Those are so funny to watch. I'm thinking about coming up with a new TikTok channel called what did we say it was going to be? Kings of the Roost. Because my roosters are freaking hilarious. I had one king, we call him Nina's baby daddy. That's a long story, but these are game roosters, so they're technically fighting roosters, but they're just yard birds. And he's so pretty. And he's been strutting around here for 2 years like he's just king of the world. Well, he produced a mini me. And the mini me is about half his size now with half his spurs and with a broke toe. And they got into it a week ago tonight. And my big rooster was thrown off his throne, and the little rooster's been ruling the roost. He's got a bum foot. He's had that bum foot since he was a chick. He's got a bum foot. Now he has one eye because he lost an eye during their fighting. And his spurs are like that long, where Ronnie's is like that long. And he's at least half the weight as Ronnie. And it cracks me up because Ronnie will run from him. And Ronnie could beat him up in no time. I mean, but he won't do it. He just runs. He's a lover, not a fighter. That's why Nina loves him. That's why he's Nina's baby daddy. All right, y'all ready to get started on this? I probably should have brought some vodka or something. I may need this I may need a shot before I go to bed. All right, prologue. I'm Shannon. Everything okay with me just starting at the beginning and going through till time's up? Because that's pretty much what I had planned. I didn't think to ask to see if you wanted anything specific, but I think you got to kind of go with this to set everything up. It's not kind of something you can just jump in the middle and read for an hour, I don't think. Prologue. The fact that I am wearing no clothes should frighten me. Sounds like heaven to me. The vulnerability most ordinary people have when naked and exposed to the world is an emotion I'm not accustomed to any longer. Preston made sure of it, just as he made sure I was properly trained, properly mannered, and properly subservient to only him. You would think 45 degrees without a scrap of metal to cover my raw flesh would cripple me. You would believe that, but you would be wrong. As every car passes me by, I do what I've done for the past 16 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, and 4 hours. I count. I count the number of cars, the number of trucks, the number of vans. I count the red ones, the green ones, the black ones, and the silver ones. I notice every passenger, the brunettes, the blondes, the redheads, and the balding. I count them all, just as Preston taught me. And although he's driven away and I don't know if I will ever see him again, I know without a doubt I must follow his rules. If I fail, he won't love me back. And if he doesn't love me back, I will die. And although death will afford me the peace I've dreamed about for nearly 2 years, I cringe knowing no one will mourn the loss of that nameless, soulless girl who fell for the man that broke her. Chapter 1. Don't move the blindfold. A deep, husky voice invaded my hearing through some sort of speaker. My remaining senses attempted to grasp the severity of my situation. The voice was rough, aggressive. Um, The voice was rough, aggressive, and held back all too familiar rage. 4 words were all it had taken to throw me into a past I had no desire to return to. Although the voices from my past memories were vastly different from those from this new voice, I knew an angry inflection when I heard one, and this man was irate. I lowered my hands to my side and shook off the bad memories, blindly taking in my surroundings. First and foremost, I was naked. The cold air had pebbled my small nipples, and the goosebumps pampering my skin made the hair on my arms and neck stand at attention. I could feel the silkiness of the satin sheets cocooning my body, adding to the chill encompassing my entire being. I was lying perfectly flat, my head cushioned by a single pillow. I assumed I was on a bed, an incredibly plush bed. This didn't feel like it matched the rest of my current environment. I appeared surprisingly calm to the outside eye. Anyone who approached me right now might think I was sleeping. On the inside, though, I could feel the turmoil and fear churn my gut, threatening to spill out and reveal my secrets. Knowing my luck, though, I'd probably end up choking on my vomit given my current horizontal state. The last thing I remember before now was being in my cardboard fort on the corner of 45th and Baker, snuggled between my collapsible walls, hoping the coming rainstorm wouldn't penetrate my pseudo home. I could recall the first few drops hitting my exposed feet and soaking through my blue nightgown, but nothing after. It was as though a dark fog had washed over my memories, and no amount of wind could clear it out to reveal what had actually happened. The bed was certainly not a nice change from the homeless squalor I'd been living in for the past 3 months, but only God knew if my predicament was actually better or far, far worse. I assumed I would find out soon enough. Waking up, blindfolded in a stranger's bed was enough to give me pause. Pushing the thoughts from my head, I concentrated again on the circumferential area my other senses would pick up on. Being a runaway and part of the foster system had taught me early how to use my hearing and sense of smell when I couldn't use my sight. I had hidden under the bed so many times in my childhood, fearful of the adults and some of the older children in my foster home. The darkness didn't frighten me. There was a peace I found when the light was no longer visible. I called on that peace now. I needed it. Although the space seemed as though it was cloaked in complete silence, there was always something to hear. If you strained hard enough, it was always something to hear if you strained hard enough. So far away, an average person wouldn't be able to discern the sound of drip, drip, drip greeted my ears. The noise seemed to be coming from behind another wall, possibly even another room. No other sounds could be heard except my deep, heavy breathing. I continued to listen for more clues, but was disappointed by the lack of noise around me. Taking a whiff of the air in the enclosure, I let my nose sort out the smells infiltrating it. The scent of bleach was overpowering, and it seemed to be mixed with some kind of perfume. The floral smell would have been appealing had it not been marred by the scent of the offending lemon chemical. Hello? I croaked, not trusting the strained way the two syllables formed in my throat. The echo of the single word bounced around the walls, giving me an idea of the size of the space I was in. I assumed it was a basement of some sort, or possibly even an above ground concrete room, something similar to what you might find in a prison or holding cell. My overactive imagination sometimes got the better of me. On more than one occasion, it had gotten me into serious trouble throughout my childhood. Not knowing what was out there could prove deadly if my brain had any say in the matter. I decided lying here wasn't something I could continue doing. I gripped the sheet, wrapped it around me, and attempted to sit up. I wasn't going to remove the blindfold. I would play their game, but I wouldn't wait forever. The fearful side of my mentality was still shivering in terror and wanted to crawl further under the covers and hope the boogeyman went away. The rational side told me whoever had put me on this bed would come back soon and hopefully give me the answers I wanted. I forced myself to focus on my more rational side, or the fear would engulf me, making me do something stupid, something I might regret later. Don't get out of that bed, Wendy, darling. A calm, soothing voice sounded from the system, and it caused me to tense up momentarily. This voice was far different from the gruff, angry tone of the previous man. There was no anger, no aggression, only peace. Wendy wasn't my name, which confused me slightly, but my new nickname was at the bottom of the list of things I needed to discover. For now, my focus had to be answers to my whereabouts. As much as I wanted to let the tranquil feeling run over me, I knew that decision could be potentially fatal. I needed the carefully constructed wall I had built to remain intact, no matter how comforting the stranger's voice felt. I didn't know this man from Adam, and even the most soothing of voices could belong to the vilest of men. Although I followed the directions and didn't get out of the bed, I sat all the way up, my back against the chilly bars of the headboard. I could feel the cold metal dig into my already frozen flesh. The bites of pain coming from the scrapes they created were enough to keep me sober and alert. If needed, I would be ready to jump up and fight for my life. This would be easier now I wasn't lying down. Of course, it would be easy. It would also be easier with clothes. The lack of anything covering me made me feel vulnerable. I imagined that was the point. A sudden sound made my ears perk up as I attempted to pick up the minuscule changes in the world around me. A creak filtered through, alerting me to a door being opened. I listened intently. It sounded heavy, scraping its way across the floor and back again, as it closed with a soft metal thud. The click of a lock confirmed subconsciously my location was probably in a basement. This was it. I would meet whoever was responsible for pulling me away from the homeless hell. I wasn't sure if the nervous energy coursing through me was the adrenaline, the fear, or a mixture of both, but I told myself I was ready to face my fate. My only hope was the person in the room was the man with the soothing voice and the sweet Alabek creepy nickname, not the first man with too much anger to his tone. Not the first man with too much anger to his tone. The door closed. The sound of heavy feet connecting with the floor told me there was no carpet. Without moving, I attempted to pick up every sound from the way one of his feet came down just a tad heavier to the way his breathing increased the closer he got. I didn't know the cause, but my flight side was starting to override my fight side, my imagination revving into full gear. Oh, hey, Natasha. Taking a much needed breath, I sat up a little straighter as the footsteps stopped close to me and I felt the bed dip at my feet, where the stranger sat. I held tighter to the sheet and imagined my knuckles turning white as I waited for him to speak. An eternity passed as my heart accelerated and the man's breathing grew more ragged. Soon it would be almost impossible to differentiate these big words, y'all. My breathing to his as the flow of our breath synced together. I'm not going to hurt you, Wendy, darling. The man's voice cooed. My fingers immediately relaxed slightly. If I remove your blindfold, will you behave? I nodded, not trusting my own voice or the irrational security I felt in the man's presence. I had no idea what he looked like or if he was trustworthy. My mind was basing its decision on whether to trust him or on a handful of words from the mouth of a man I had never met. How did I know if he was lying or telling the truth? The truth was I didn't, but it didn't stop my brain from believing them on faith alone. Dragging myself back to the present, I was oddly grateful he volunteered to remove the blindfold for me. I didn't think my hands would obey my brain, and my modesty was keeping me from letting go of the sheet. I had smelled him before I felt him. A blend of spices and man filled my nostrils as his fingers closed. His fingers brushed across my face, over my closed eyes, and tangled in my hair where the bands of the blindfold nestled. His scent was intoxicating, lulling me into a confused and drunken stupor. I knew in the back of my mind I shouldn't feel this sense of serenity, but I couldn't stop it from engulfing me. There had to be some sort of drug in my system. How else could I explain this feeling of security? When his hand pulled away, an emptiness I couldn't describe was left behind. Even though the blindfold was gone, I kept my eyes tightly closed. I was too scared to open them, fearful of what I would find. Would the man I had placed too much trust in be the monster from my imaginations? Would he be the hero of my fairy tales? Or would he be the villain from my reality? I didn't know, and I was too much of a coward to figure it out on my own. Open your eyes. His voice gingerly encompassed me, his fingers brushing against my cheek, his thumb grazing over my closed eyelids. My frame relaxed as I slowly peeled open both eyelids, letting them adjust to the harsh fluorescent lights above me, while the stranger's hands continued to caress my face. Blinking rapidly, I avoided looking at the man in front of me, instead, looking at the space I now inhabited. As I had suspected, I was in a cement room of sorts. Dark gray bricks made up the four walls I could see around me, and there were no windows to speak of. The only exit to this room was the door across from me. The bed I sat on was in the back, nestled up to the gray bricks. To my right, a concrete barrier. To my left, a large area sectioned off with massive black curtains. Directly in front of me was another bricked off room. The entire space was expansive, and I presumed it was the whole layout of an incredibly substantial home. For several minutes, I soaked in as much of my environment as I could. If I ever did get out of here, I would need a detailed description of where I was being held. One positive of my sequester in foster care, I got to watch a lot of television, and crime shows were my guilty pleasure. I didn't know if I would need the knowledge of an escape route, but it was better safe than sorry, and something told me no matter how gentle this man seemed, I wasn't in this bed naked out of the goodness of his heart. There was something else. I just didn't know what yet. You can't escape, Wendy darling. It's impossible. Escape. I was right. I was being held captive. But for what purpose and why me? Nothing is impossible. I choked out, finally letting my eyes fall on my captor. His chuckle sent shivers down my spine, giving me goosebumps. I like your fire. Don't let it die out. I had no idea what he meant, but at the moment I wasn't sure if I cared to examine it further. The man in front of me stole my words and my breath. In every crime show I watched, the kidnapper was almost always ugly, a monster. Usually a bullied kid at school who grew up into a lanky genius, kidnapping and torturing his former bullies before ultimately killing them. This stranger was nothing of the sort. He was, for lack of a better words, beautiful in a manly, grisly way. He was dressed all in black, only his face showing. The hoodie and black jeans did nothing to hide what was underneath. He was tall, muscled, and broad. Standing, he would easily engulf my measly 5 foot frame. His jet black hair sat in disarray under his hood, and his eyes the most piercing blue I had ever encountered. His eyebrows were raised, giving him a sinister expression that startled me for half a second. Whew, allergies, y'all. Sorry. Although facial hair had always been a turnoff, his full beard and mustache added to his features, making him the most attractive man I'd ever laid eyes on. I was staring, and I didn't fucking care. He smiled as though he knew his looks would be my downfall. He knew the current thought in my mind was not escaping him, but rather dropping the sheet and offering him my body. The realization of my ideas should have struck me as odd, but the lingering fog in my brain refused to believe I was turned on by this unwelcome stranger. My mixed emotions were starting to give me a migraine. Where am I? I knew full well he wouldn't answer my silly question, but he surprised me. You're in my home, Wendy darling, and my name is Paxton, he offered, smiling at me again, holding out his huge hand. I have a name, I whispered, ignoring his greeting. His smile vanished instantly, his face dropping. Not anymore. From now on, your name is Girl, or whatever your master decides it should be. Master? What on God's green earth was this man rambling about? I don't understand. I shook my head frantically, side to side, but my euphoric feeling subsiding and my nerves revving into full gear. Hush, came Paxton's soothing tone, the harshness gone as instantaneously as it had appeared. For now, you don't need to understand that aspect. You only need to know a few ground rules for your training. Almost immediately following Paxton's words, the calming effect I had lost found its way back into my nervous system. My bewildering emotions were starting to give me a whiplash. Training? I asked, clearly not understanding. Listen carefully, Wendy darling, and pay attention. Your life depends on it. Forget your old life. Today you are born again. You will start your physical and mental training with my brother Preston. He will mold you, shape you, and ultimately perfect you. To do so, though, you will undergo unpleasant tutelage at his hand. Pausing, I could tell he was letting his words sink in. What sort of unpleasant tutelage did he mean? Nothing he said was registering to my troubled psyche. Ooh, sorry about that, y'all. I don't know where that came from. Troubled psyche. Training? I was confused by this. Yes, girl, training, he retorted, slightly harsher than before. Every morning you will wake up with an assignment. These are for your mental stimulation and to gauge your abilities in a non-sexual fashion. Each chore done proficiently and correctly will offer you a reward. Each one you miss or fail will result in punishment. If you give it your all, you won't fail, and I expect you not to fail. My brain was swimming. Did this mean there would be training in a sexual manner as well? I wanted to ask, but the lump in my throat made it impossible. Abruptly, Paxton stood, pulling the sheet with him, exposing my nakedness to his roaming, hungry eyes. I attempted to cover myself, but I had been graced with a bountiful chest, and there was little I could do to completely cover myself from his crude, albeit appreciative gaze. With a final glance, Paxton turned. Whew, it's getting dark outside. This happens when it gets dark. Paxton turned his back on me and headed toward the curtained corner of the basement. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know what was behind the coverings. What sort of training materials would he expose? What kind of assignments would I be forced to do? He had said non-sexual. Was there a classroom hidden behind the sheets? My pulse accelerated to an unhealthy rate as different images popped in and out of my head, making me see things that weren't really there. After Paxton disappeared behind the curtain, I frantically looked around again, hoping to find another way out. I didn't care what kind of assignments they wanted me to complete. For once in my life, I found myself wishing I was back on the streets in my cardboard home. Being homeless wasn't a catwalk, but I'd never experienced fear like this, being hungry and cold. The worst that would happen to me there was dying in my sleep. At least then I didn't know it was coming. Just as quickly as Paxton disappeared, he reappeared. A small contraption with a number pad and a button was in his hand. I froze in place, my eyes glued to his palms. I couldn't deny my curiosity. This is a counting grid. He pushed the button on the device. Above me, the ceiling morphed into tiny squares, lit up with every color imaginable. From where I sat on the bed, the squares expanded across the entire room, giving me the feeling of being in a nightclub. Apparently, I'm not getting enough oxygen, y'all. Can't imagine. With each quadratic light only being about an inch, I guess there had to be over 1 million lights encompassing the room. It was beautiful and mesmerizing. There are 12 different colors on this grid and 1,423,872 squares. Each day, you will be given a color and must count the number of squares on that specific color. If you're correct at the end of the day, you shall be rewarded. If not, Preston will be forced to punish you. Punish? I squeaked out, reverting back to one-word answers. What sort of punishment? I was too scared to ask what kind would be delivered. Yes, Wendy, darling. Punishment. Pushing the button again, the lights went out as I lost all the energy in my body, slumping against the headboard. My hands fell to my sides as an endless stream of tears cascading down my face. I no longer cared about my nudity. The word punishment circled my brain. Images of children being bent over their father's knee assaulted me. School teachers with rulers and moms with wooden spoons. Somehow in the back of my mind, I knew those were not the punishments Paxton was referring to. Why are you crying? Paxton sat next to me, wiping away my tears. His genuine concern confused me, as well as his ability to speak of punishments in one breath and the reason for my tears in the next. without a shred of awkwardness leaking over. Why me? I avoided his question by asking my own. I needed to know what the end game was. Why was I here? Why was I chosen? What about me screamed punishment and training? Because you're perfect, he whispered, leaning in so his lips were at my ear, his breath fanning my face. I wanted to push him away until his teeth captured my earlobe. The jolt I felt had me leaning into him, my body reacting of its own accord. His mouth traveled from my ear down the side of my neck, placing feather like kisses on my exposed skin. His calloused hand found its way to the outside of my breast, and his thumb grazed over my sensitive nipple. My head screamed, push him away, but the sensations were just too intense to ignore. I shut down my brain and closed my eyes as his mouth traveled down my collarbone. As his teeth flashed onto my other nipple, tugging gently, sending pleasure to the center of my being, I felt my breath quicken, my heart rate spike as he assaulted my nubs with his mouth, his teeth, his fingers. In all of my 18 years, I'd never felt sensations like the ones coursing through my body, and my experience was vast. I like your birthmark. He ran a finger across my heart-shaped mole above my left breast. Was my reply since I had effectively shut off my brain for a few mind-numbing moments. Are you calmer now, Wendy, darling? May we proceed with the rules? Yes, Paxton. My mouth moved involuntarily, though the words didn't register in my brain. He pulled away, and I felt the loss of heat immediately as a shiver racked through my body. As if on cue, Paxton bent over and picked up the discarded sheet, carefully covering me and tucking it around my shivering form. As if our little interlude had never happened, Paxton picked up where he left off. Preston is a stickler for good hygiene. There's a bathroom in that room. He pointed to the bricked off space in front of me. Every necessity you could need is in there. Shampoo, conditioner, body wash, and lotion. There's also a full wardrobe. Each day when you receive your assignment, there will also be specific instructions. Make sure to follow them to the letter. Do you understand? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. My skin burned from Paxton's kisses, and my body ached for a release it hadn't had in months. His smell wrapped around me like a warm blanket on a cold winter's night, drawing up images of the 2 seconds of heat he provided me. You must verbally answer, Wendy darling. I need to know you're grasping this. Yes, Paxton, I understand. I managed to spit out, the buzz around my being starting to clear. Good. Now this will serve as your only warning. Preston is harsh in his teachings. If you follow his directive, you will not be permanently harmed. Do I make myself clear? Permanently harmed? What did he even mean? The buzz was gone. I was hurled back into reality, memories of kisses far away. Once again, the change of pace left my head spinning and made my headache intensify. I don't understand, I retorted, frustrated. What am I being trained? Why? What am I being trained to be? You haven't guessed yet? I thought you were smarter than this, he replied, walking back over to the black curtain and yanking it down. You're training to be the perfect slave. Chapter 2. The incessant buzzing couldn't stop, forcing me to come out of the dreamland I had found myself in. My body raged at me as soon as I sat up, forcing me to lie back down. I was sore. Every part of me screamed in pain, every hole bruised, every ounce of my spirit crushed like a paint on a wall. Good morning, Wendy darling. A now familiar voice chimed the PA system. Your assignment is on the table. I didn't wait to look at the table. I didn't want to look at the table, but I did. The nightstand next to my bed held a sealed envelope. No markings. I wouldn't be able to open it until my brain could process the last 24 hours of my life and the hell I had woken up in. If I could have avoided opening it at all, I would have. After last night, I knew without a doubt that would never be an option. When Paxton had ripped away the black curtain, my mouth dropped to the floor. A glass structure stood there, a mirror image of my current surroundings. Inside sat a duplicate bed with a matching nightstand. The difference between the two rooms? The items scattered along the walls and around the bed. Most of the things I saw were something out of a torture chamber. Metal shackles were chained to the various spots along the outer brick wall. Next to them was an assortment of whips and floggers. At 18, I probably shouldn't have known what the items were, but my unusual upbringing had forced me to grow up sooner than I should have, gaining an in-depth knowledge of the adult world at an early age. My eyes couldn't take in everything in front of me fast enough. A large wooden cross, as well as other small wooden structures, adorned the opposite wall. And if I wasn't mistaken, there was a set of stocks you could find in a depicted medieval movies. Every inch of available space had something attached. As much as I honestly didn't want to know, I found myself curious about the contents of the various dressers and armoires. The full unveiling was terrifying, and before I could process any more, my brain shut down, my head collapsing back onto the pillow, my eyes fading to black. My reprieve was short-lived. I woke several moments later to Paxton sitting beside me, brushing the hair away from my face, humming softly to himself. He didn't seem surprised at my sudden faint. In fact, it was almost as if he expected it. I know this is hard, but you're a healthy girl. You can do this. His words meant to soothe, only confused me more. I don't understand. Why me? I whispered, vertigo still in full effect. I already told you, Wendy, darling. You're perfect. You'll make the perfect slave. This is what you were born to do. Without any warning, Paxton leaned down, grabbed my chin, and pulled me in for a searing kiss that made my toes involuntarily curl. I didn't want this. I didn't want him, but my body reacted without my approval. Reaching out, I clawed at his hoodie, wanting to push him away. But my body won the war, and instead I found my fingers clutching the material so I could drag him in closer. I told myself I was doing this to ground myself over the shock of the past half hour in his presence, but I knew better. My foster father had turned me into a slut, and that's what I would always be. Sex was my way of escaping the depressing hole that the world kept shoving me into. It didn't matter who the other person was, as long as they could make me forget for a brief moment. The pain always came back with a vengeance. But a few moments of peace and bliss were enough to get me through years of heartache. Wrapping his hands around my wrist, Paxton unfurled my fingers and let my hand drop, my pride cracking in two as our lips disengaged. Go clean up, Wendy, darling. Preston will join you soon to begin your training. The green light above the door, he pointed out its location, will signal a 30-minute warning. And when it turns red, you have 5 minutes. Make sure you're on the bed with nothing on, and please be good. With a final kiss to my forehead, Paxton turned away from me and exited my proverbial literal cell. The clink of the lock reverberated around the room, sending me into an emotional tailspin. There was something damaged in my brain. 1 second I was being told I was kidnapped to be a sex slave, and the next I was letting the man I didn't know tongue fuck my tonsils. To top it all off, I enjoyed it. I fucking loved the 3 seconds of attention Paxton rained down on my body. I couldn't get enough, and the thought frightened me. Where was this insanity coming from? I could only hope it was all a dream. Without a stitch of clothes, I jumped up from the bed and ran to the exit. I reached for the handle that wasn't there, and my brain worked overtime trying to figure out how Paxton had gotten out of the room. I felt around for a button or a handle, but came up short. There was nothing visible on the wall or the door, no secret contraptions or books to pull, only flat bricked office space. Getting out of here was looking even more impossible as the seconds ticked by. At this point, I reached panic and slammed my hands against the door repeatedly, hoping someone other than the brothers could hear me and get me out of this hell. I didn't know how long I pounded on the door, but eventually my knees gave out as I slumped against the cool metal, wrapping my arms around my knees and crying into the crook of my elbow. I was mentally and physically exhausted. After several long and tiring minutes, when my tears had dried and the shaking that had taken over my body settled, I stood on wobbly legs and debated my next move. Looking around, I walked over to the glass enclosure of doom. I wasn't brave enough to go inside. I knew I would have to eventually if I were to follow Paxton's orders. For now, though, I was content hanging outside the entrance. Being this close to it didn't help my anxiety as I saw more shackles chained to the floor and other odd cuffs, chains, and striking implements I hadn't seen from my place on the bed. When the room in front of me began to blur from the tears clouding my vision, the items turning more grotesque as I stared, I shook my head and turned on my heel, heading for the shower. For a few lingering seconds, the beauty of the bathroom made me forget my circumstances. As promised, everything I could have ever wanted, or any girl for that matter, was found in the spacious bathroom and walk-in closet. I briefly scrutinized the clothes, but when I found nothing but revealing lingerie instead of t-shirts and sweatpants, I exited the wardrobe and walked into the adjoining bathroom. 12 different shampoos greeted me, along with matching conditioners and various scents of body wash. Sensing a pattern, I counted all the items in the bathroom. There were a dozen of everything: loofahs, lotions, body scrubs, moisturizers, and even makeup met me in the same repetitive number. I didn't need to count the towels or toothbrushes to know they would be the same. The shower was massive. It could probably easily fit at least 5 grown men with room to spare. Oh, and I love to see that. Somebody needs to write a book about that. And I counted the number of shower heads. I knew without a doubt how many there would be. Outside the shower stall was a touch screen where I could control the entire shower stall and set each head to my preference. If I weren't here under the current happenstance, I might have even been able to appreciate the luxury that had been afforded me with this bathroom. Regardless of the obsessive need one of the two had with numbers and shower equipment. A clicking sound filled the room, pulling me from my dark and almost humorous thoughts about the brothers' OCD, and I stopped to the entrance of the bathroom to investigate. Above the entrance, just as I had been warned, a green light shone down on me, causing me to tremble all over again. The severity of what could happen in 30 minutes smacked me in the face. Remembering there was little time left until I met the man behind the gruff voice, I raced back to the shower and turned on all the jets, stepping in and letting the hot water cascade down my body, pummeling my muscles, relaxing me. I didn't know how things were going to go or what would be included in the training Paxton referred to, but I did pick up on the seriousness of his words, the fact I needed to do my best. They were training me to be a slave. Slave? What kind of slave? With the glass enclosure, it was evident the kind of slave they were training me to be. I was meant to be a sex slave. It didn't matter how hot the water was. My bones chilled instantly when the realization actually dawned on me, and I let myself come to terms with my predicament. Preston would be training me as a sex slave. The knowledge I had pulled myself from one sexually abusive hell only to find myself thrust into another was enough to make me claw my eyes out. This time, though, it wasn't between one aggressive man and one unwilling woman. Sex slavery was a whole new can of worms, and I was the bait Preston would dangle on his perfectly manicured hook. I recalled how much the media had talked about the increase in sex trafficking, and even though I was homeless, I never anticipated it would be my future. Who would want a little homeless orphan girl? Sure, no one would miss me or even realize I was missing, but neither man had any idea this was something I could do. Maybe they didn't need to know. Maybe they just needed a body. I guess I would get my answer. Stepping out from under the hot water, I anticipated I didn't have much time left before facing my fate. I wrapped a towel around me and walked to the vanity, selecting the cucumber and melon scent from the row of lotions. I slathered some on and inhaled the refreshing aroma. I vowed then and there, whenever things got rough, and I had a feeling they would, I would hold on to this scent and the memories it carried with me. Memories of being pushed on a swing by my biological mother, of her reading me bedtime stories and baking cookies on the only Christmas Eve I could remember with her. Those memories would keep me sane and whole. A now familiar clicking sound rang out, and my head snapped up, my eyes seeking out the light over the door. Red. Hey, Miss Shirley. I had 5 minutes to finish drying off and force myself into the glass room. Could I do it? Could I willingly walk into a space full of terrifying weapons of torture, completely naked? I didn't have a choice. I could put up a fight, but if Preston was anything like Paxton physically, I was screwed. My best option for tonight was to see what happened and then decide on my next course of action. If only I had a weapon, something I could use to defend myself. Staring at the small plastic bottle of lotion in my hand, I threw my arm back and threw it at the mirror on the vanity. I may be weak, but even I knew an object hitting a mirror that hard should have at least cracked it, not bounce off and land at my feet. Of course, the glass wouldn't break. I was an idiot. A setup like this one I was in had no pitfalls, no mistakes. This was a fortress, and I was the long-haired princess trapped in the highest tower. Accepting defeat, I dropped the towel on the ground and made my way out to the main floor, my head down. Within my 30 minutes, the room seemed to have grown colder, and I felt goosebumps rise on my shoulders. The heat from the shower gone, the relaxing effect stripped away by the knowledge or lack thereof of what was to come. Either that or my nerves were kicking in again. Taking a deep breath, I crossed over the threshold between my basement hell and my slave training hell to wait on Preston and his teachings. I hoped he'd go easy on me. Prayed this would be all some sort of practical joke, or that Preston was like his brother and this would be full of passionate lovemaking with a little kink thrown in for good measure. I prayed it would be the case. But like everything else in my life, my prayers were left unanswered. Doing as Paxton commanded, I did my best to ignore my surroundings and head for the bed. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be sitting, kneeling, or lying down, so I opted to perch on my back. My stomach rolled, growling, as I tried to remember my last full meal. The morning before I was taken, I had found a half-eaten breakfast sandwich in the trash, and the night before, the stale crust from a thrown-out pizza. The last full meal I could recall was the night before I had run away. The last day I would be 17 and a ward of the state. My foster father hadn't even remembered my birthday, or possibly just didn't care. Using the change I had found over the past year, loose coins I had stashed in an old sock, I went to Taco Bell and bought 3 tacos and a bean burrito. It was one of the best meals I'd eaten since my foster mother had died. With every passing minute, my nerves ramped higher, my stomach clenched, and my vision blurred, the bed vibrating as my body trembled. 5 minutes had long since come and gone, and there was no Preston in sight, the red light still on and taunting. Just when I reached the edge of insanity, my mind unable to take the deafening silence, the clicking started again, and when I looked up, the red light went out. I felt myself calm instantly, hoping maybe Preston wasn't coming in tonight. Maybe this was all part of my training. I'd never been good with patients as it was. Just wishful thinking on my part. No sooner had the thought crossed my mind than the lights in the room dimmed, and I watched as the door slid open, revealing a dark silhouette in the entryway. Preston was taller than Paxton by at least a few inches, but by no means less bulky. He wore a pair of beat up jeans, holes adorning each kneecap. He wore no shirt, no socks, and no shoes. Even in the pale light, the resemblance between the two were uncanny. Preston's hair was pulled into a low ponytail, keeping the unruly strands at bay. He was the complete opposite to his disheveled twin. His stiff, unyielding posture was menacing as he stood there, gazing at me from the doorway. I could see the heat blush rise on my cheeks. I could feel the heat blush rise on my cheeks as he continued his visual onslaught for far longer than socially acceptable. The sound of the outer door closing pulled the pair of us from our trance. Once the lock clicked, Preston took a step towards me, his bare feet slapping the cold, unforgiving concrete floor. He deliberately took his time, each step seemingly to take minutes. When he reached the entrance to the glass room, I felt my heart rate accelerate and my breathing become nothing more than shallow spurts. Preston's entire chest was covered in tattooed numbers. Different sizes, shapes, and fonts adorned him from just under his collarbone down below the waistband of his jeans. Some of the ink was crude, while some of them were finely done, but all of them were the same numbers. The longer I lingered, the more of a pattern I started to see. These weren't just random numbers. No, they were specific. 1 through 11 peppered his body. They held some sort of significance, and in the back of my mind, I tried deciphering their meaning, but his stare made it impossible for me to concentrate. Neil. His tone was low and harsh, the one word causing my heart to plummet into the pit of my stomach. I couldn't move. The fear catapulting through my body held me captive. I won't tell you again, girl. Neil, he shouted, causing my ears to ring. Attempting to follow his directions, I scurried off the bed and dropped to my knees on the hard concrete, scraping my knee in the process. With 2 large strides, he was in front of me, the smell of cedar wood wafting through my nostrils. Grabbing my hair and suspending me in midair, I cried out in shock. When I tell you to do something, you worthless slut, you will do it immediately without hesitation. Do I make myself clear? He bellowed, his fingers still gripping my hair tightly. My hands clawing at his wrist as I dangled in the air. Yes, I cried out, tears falling again from the onslaught of pain. With a shake and an extra tug, Preston released me to crash back onto the floor in a crumpled pile of limbs. In here, I am your master. In here, I am your mother, your father, your lover, and your teacher. You will service me, learn from me, and above all else, obey me. In here, you are mine to do as I see fit. Yes, master. The words burned my tongue, bile rising in my throat. I didn't know if it was the correct response or if I should have spoken. I knew calling him Preston was out of the question, and not acknowledging his interrogation could have been deadly. Swallowing down my disdain, I shoved my immediate hatred for Preston into the back of my mind and waited for his next command. Good. Now kneel and rest your legs. Now. Preston started screaming at me when I didn't move fast enough for his liking. Doing as he bid, I took a deep breath and set up, my butt connecting with the heels of my feet while my arms hung loosely at my sides. Embarrassment flooded through me at my position at his feet. I felt like a puppy in disobedience school. Palms up on your thighs, keeping your eyes downcast, and don't move. His words were harsh and unforgiving as he taught me the proper way to heal. Getting into position, I coerced myself into a calmness I didn't honestly feel. In the center of my being, I knew if I moved, I would regret it. My head so ached from where his fingers had dug into my scalp and captured my hair. If he was that callous with my hair, how would he be with the rest of me? A tremor ran through me at that moment. Did I not make myself clear when I told you to remain still? It looks like Paxton was wrong, and your ability to follow direction is minimal. Perhaps your first punishment will teach you. Please, master, I whispered, my tears coming at a steady pace, fear gripping my heart and strangling it, cutting off my capacity for calmness. You'll learn, girl. They all do. Now open your mouth. My mouth? Looking up, I immediately understood his choice of words. Too lost in my own misery and fear, I had noticed Preston had removed his jeans and positioned himself directly in front of me, his cock jutting out inches from my face, hard and leaking. All right, yeah, we're going to finish this chapter. It's got a few more pages, so. I said, open. Without hesitation, I opened my mouth an inch, just enough for my tongue to dart out and taste the salt of my tears. Come on, girl. Do you honestly think that's enough? If I have to tell you again, I will wedge it open and you won't like it. Opening my jaw wider, his words sparking a growing panic, I felt the tip of him with my tongue. Preston was large, oppressively so. Even with my mouth expanded as far as it could possibly go, I could still feel the skin around my lips stretch to the peak of their elasticity. When he guided himself into me inch by inch, he didn't stop, and with every shift forward of his hips, I could feel the revulsion creeping up my throat, threatening to spill out. When he hit the back of my throat, I gagged and attempted to retreat, but he didn't relent. Instead, he fisted his right hand through my hair and pushed deeper, seating himself entirely in my mouth. She misunderstood my ass. Instead, he fisted his right hand through my hair and pushed deeper, seating himself entirely in my mouth, his balls resting against my chin. My eyes watered, bulging out of their sockets, and I couldn't breathe. To make matters worse, he smiled down at me as he brought up his left hand and pinched closed my nose. Yeah, he so misunderstood. For 5 long seconds, he stood there, not moving, his hands on the back of my head and the bridge of my nose, keeping me locked in place as I gagged. His dick trapped around my esophagus. I'd have probably bit his dick off. He'd have probably been having to sew that sucker back on. When he finally pulled out, he brought with it the contents of my stomach, which amounted to nothing more than fresh bile and long strands of saliva. Again, he shouted, serving as a millisecond warning. Without giving me a chance to recover, I found him thrusting back inside faster than the first time, hitting the back of my throat again and pushing further. This time, he didn't stop and wait. This time, he immediately withdrew and then plunged back in again. Each time he did, I gagged a little more, bringing up a mixture of acidic juices and spit that dripped down my chin and over my chest. Ugly tears streamed down my face, embarrassment flooding my cheeks. The torturous pace didn't stop. The humiliation and tears were constant as he ravaged my throat, bruising me in places that shouldn't be touched by anything but food. At some point, I found myself detaching from my body, floating somewhere above the scene, watching in horror as he face fucked me over and over again. No, girl, you do not get to disengage from this. Focus. Preston grunted, his saturated cock flinging out of my mouth and bobbing up and down. Slapping me hard, I fell to the side, only to be righted by Preston's hands in my hair and my lips forced back open by his engorged head. With a few more quick thrusts, his hands gripped my head and held me in place as he dumped his load down my throat, his hips grinding against my face. If you bring that back up, I will make you lick it up off the floor. You've already made a fucking mess and will be punished accordingly. Preston released my hair and took a step back, letting my shoulders slump into feet. I watched as Preston walked over to a dresser I hadn't paid attention to and grabbed a towel from the top drawer. Wiping himself clean, he threw the rag in my direction. Clean up your mess, slut, and then get back onto the bed, face down. My rage almost blindsided me as I picked up the towel, but I was a quick study. Quickly, I grabbed the rag and cleaned the floor off my spit and ball, as well as my chin and my stomach, before depositing the towel in the nearby wastebasket and climbing back onto the bed in record time. I could feel my anger burning through me. How could he punish me for gag reflexes I had no control over? You keep stacking up your transgressions, girl. What did I do? I turned to look at the man at the foot of the bed before my common sense and filter kicked in. I hadn't seen the slap coming, not until the stars filled my vision and my neck snapped back. One moment he stood at the end of the bed, and the next he was in front of me, rage radiating from his body. Don't you ever speak to me that way again, slave. I will destroy you. Grabbing my hair yet again, Preston forced me to look into his eyes, and I trembled. There was nothing there. No warmth or light shone out of them. Only hatred, aggression, and a dark pit of never-ending blackness. Preston was fucking crazy, and there was nothing I could do to save myself. In that horrifying instant, I knew the hell I had been living in was nothing compared to the torment I was about to go through. He would ruin me, and no amount of pleading would save me. I'd heard somewhere there was no such thing as bad people, only good individuals who did bad things. Whoever said that was a fucking liar. They had clearly never met Preston. Alrighty, that gets you guys to chapter 3. So, what do you think so far? Oh, God, that gives me the creeps. Oh, let's see what we got going on here. Thank you, Natasha. That would be better if I wasn't suffering from allergies. I knew you'd like it, Nina and Vincy and Jackie. Miss Shirley, what are you thinking about it? I don't know if you like them this dark. Poor Preston. Psst. Oh, it's a good book. Nightmares and all. Oh my goodness. Well, you sold 3 books this week, so see, I have a hard time rereading books. I'm just not a rereader. So, Alrighty, so you can get it on, you cannot get it from Amazon, but you can get it from Apple and Barnes and Noble. And $3.99, I believe, is what it cost. So if you like this kind of stuff, and this is not for everybody, I'm going to tell you right now. If you're watching this and you've not been commenting or whatever, this book is not for everybody. So it only gets darker. I'm just saying. There's some lovely spots. There's some sweet spots in it. But it does get a lot darker. The next chapter gets really dark in a hurry because you get to find out what her punishments are. And man, my body hurt from all the clenching I did. But it gets darker. We're just going to leave it at that. Let's put it this way. The sweet spots, you welcome them. And you're going, I can breathe. I can breathe. I can relax. And then the next thing you know, the lights are out again and you're back in that hellhole and you're going, oh shit. Well, Nina, you just going to have to read it yourself, sister. Yes, they are few and far between. Just enough to tease you. Now, Natasha, Paxton gets sweet a few times. I mean, he eats her out and he kisses her and whatever, and she enjoys it. And I'm not saying anymore because it'll give it away. You're so full of shit, Natasha. You need to hang out with us some more. Girlfriend, you just need to hang. You get this good. All right, what the hell am I reading tomorrow night? I done whacked out on this one. I don't need to go there. There's where I want to go. Tomorrow night. Oh, I have Kate McCoy and her book Blackout. Whoop, whoop. So y'all need to come back and tomorrow night and listen to me read for Kate. If I have a voice left. See, I wasn't going to tell them all that stuff. She sings to him too. That little song she sung like tore my heart. When she first sings what her mother used to sing to her, that tore my heart up. That just broke it. Oh, yes, I love rom-coms. That's more my speed, y'all. I just have a hard time with dark. HEA, does it have HEA? Because I loved Chub Rub until the end. Oh my gosh, girl, I could have come through that book and just strangled your fucking neck right then and there. No, Miss Shirley, I don't. One, I don't have the time. Two, they are not all my cup of tea. I'm not gonna lie. But those that I do read, I'll leave a I see, I don't trust you on that, Shannon. You say it's got a HEA sequel, but I don't know. You broke my heart with the first one. But Miss Shirley, no, I just don't have the time. Because you think about, I read, and see, when I first started off, I was reading 3 books a week. Or at one point, I was reading 3 and 4 books a week. Because sometimes I still read on Sundays. And I just don't have that kind of time. I'm doing good. I'm trying to be asleep. Like it's 9 o'clock now. I will try to be asleep no later than 11. So, all right, I'll have to put Chunky Monkey on my list then. But if it's not, I'm banning you. I'm banning you from my book nook. So you better not let me down. I'm a romantic. I gotta have my HEAs. But yeah, Miss Shirley, I wished I could read them all. Oh, I wished I could. The good thing is I got them piled up in my library, and someday I will read them, or somebody will be reading them to me. I guarantee it. I'll get it. I get it, girlfriend. Don't worry. I did get my new phone. Look, it came in yesterday. See, I got my little sloth covers. See, this is totally me right now. I'm ready for bed. Now, I like books I need my vibrators on too. This book, I was scared to get my vibrator out. So it scared me. I couldn't even get turned on with it. So all right, ladies, I'm getting off from here and I'm going to bed. If you guys want to come back tomorrow night, we'll continue this conversation along with Kate McCoy's book, Blackout. All righty. You ladies have a great evening. And thank you so much, Shannon, for letting me read this. Natasha, come back and spend some time with us, sister. You were a lot of fun, sister. Talk to y'all later. Happy reading.